So while some NFL teams are preparing for the wild card round of the playoffs, others are pressing the reset button, firing coaches, GMs, and more as they try and figure out how to navigate this next season. Some of these moves are questionable, while others definitely make sense and were long overdue. So I've got to talk about that as I recap the regular season finale and look ahead to the playoffs right after. First up, we had two Saturday games again, with the first being the Ravens and Browns. Baltimore just needed to win, and they would clinch the AFC North. Thankfully, their competition wasn't too stiff, as the 3-13 Browns were 20-point underdogs coming into this game. Well, 2 passing touchdowns from Lamar, 2 rushing touchdowns from Derrick Henry, and a pick 6 by Nate Wiggins gave the Ravens 35 points, which was enough to cover the spread, as they held the Browns to just 10 points on offense. So with that win, the Ravens finished the regular season 12-5 and officially clinched the AFC North for the second year in a row, and also locked up the 3 seed in the AFC. I'll look at the entire playoff bracket and schedule for wildcard weekend at the end of this video, but I did want to mention that Lamar Jackson became the first quarterback in NFL history to have 4,000 passing yards, 40 passing touchdowns, and 4 or fewer interceptions, which is pretty impressive, but he also finished the season with over 900 rushing yards and became the first player to have over 4,000 passing yards and 800 rushing yards. Josh Allen has had a tremendous season in his own right, but Lamar might have done enough to secure his 3rd MVP award, though you could certainly argue that Josh Allen did a bit more with less. That is an argument, though, for another day. But Baltimore's focus now is going to be on wide receiver 1, Zay Flowers, who left the game with a knee sprain and is considered day-to-day with the injury, according to John Harbaugh. So we'll see if he's able to go. I doubt it at this point in time, with the Ravens having a bit of a short week as they play on Saturday evening. But that's an unfortunate hit to Baltimore's offense. Zay Flowers had 1,000 yards on the season and was definitely going to be a threat down the playoff stretch here. And that loss is a pretty big one for Baltimore if he cannot come back quickly enough. And before I move on to the next game, it's worth mentioning, since we're talking about the Browns, they faced off against the Ravens, that Deshaun Watson reportedly suffered some kind of setback in his recovery from that Achilles tear. Browns GM Andrew Berry said they don't have all the details yet, but the setback is definitely going to extend his recovery process. So will he be able to play in 2025? I would imagine yes at some point, though some may rather see him stay on the bench because, off the field issues aside, he played pretty poorly on the field before his injury. Next up, the Bengals momentarily stayed alive in the playoff race after beating the Steelers 19-17 on Saturday night. The Steelers had a chance to hit a game-winning field goal on their final drive, but Pat Freiermuth dropped this would-be first down on 4th and 12, and the Bengals walked away with the W. Unfortunately for them, it didn't matter because they needed both the Dolphins and Broncos to lose in order to make it into the playoffs, and as we'll see here in a second, that definitely did not happen. It's actually insane to think that the Bengals missed out on the playoffs despite Joe Burrow leading the league in both passing yards and touchdowns. Trey Hendrickson led the NFL in sacks, and Jamar Chase became the 6th receiver in NFL history to win the Triple Crown and lead the league in catches, yards, and touchdowns. They were able to win 5 games in a row, but they started off too slow, and a big reason for that was their defense, or lack thereof. The offense finished top 10 in both yards and scoring, while the defense finished 25th in points and yards allowed, and were 3rd to last in red zone scoring percentage. So it came as no huge surprise when it was announced Monday morning that defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo was fired. He had been the DC since 2019 and put together some solid units during his tenure, but the last 2 seasons had not been great, with this one in particular making it impossible, at least to most people, to bring him back next year. So they're out and Lou Anarumo's out, but the Steelers are in, moving on, at least limping on to the playoffs. They've lost their last 4 games and have averaged just over 14 points a game over that span. So yeah, good luck this week against the Ravens, even if they don't have Zay Flowers. The Bengals weren't the only ones fighting for their playoff lives in Week 18, though. The Dolphins, like the Bengals, needed Denver to lose to the Chiefs, but they needed to win their own matchup first. Well, the Tua-less Dolphins fell behind 18-6 in the 3rd quarter and ended up losing 32-20 to the New York Jets. With rumors swirling around of a possible retirement, Aaron Rodgers had one of his best games of what's been a nightmare of a season for him. He threw for 274 yards and 4 touchdowns, which made him just the 5th quarterback in NFL history to throw for more than 500 career touchdowns. And while the Dolphins obviously hated to see their season end like that, Tyreek Hill just made it pretty tough for them to feel good about really anything heading into this offseason. Late in the game on Sunday, he took himself out of the game on their last 2 possessions and remained on the sideline. Mike McDaniel basically said it wasn't a new injury, but was told Tyreek was not going to be available at the end of the game. And after the game, Tyreek didn't hesitate to let the media know exactly how he's feeling about his role with this team moving forward.
At the end of the day, bro, I got to do what's best for, for my career. And
you thinking about leaving here?
If it is, yes.
Well, that was definitely something. Then on Monday, this man changed his profile picture on X to the infamous photo of Antonio Brown leaving the stadium during the middle of a game with his own face. Tyreek had his own face photoshopped onto it. So we'll see how this offseason plays out, but it sounds like the soon-to-be 31-year-old receiver is going to be headed to his 3rd NFL team soon, if they can figure out how to work his contract situation out, because it is a bit of a mess, to say the least, if the Dolphins try to move on from him. As for the Dolphins, it really wouldn't have mattered if they had won this game anyway, because the Broncos got the win over the Chiefs to secure the 7th seed in the AFC, which in turn eliminated both the Bengals and the Dolphins. The Chiefs were resting all their key starters and went pretty deep into their bench, so it's hard to have any real takeaways from this game, at least for the Chiefs, or for the Broncos for that matter. Bo Nix did play pretty well against the B and C squad, finishing 26-29 for 321 yards and 4 touchdowns. The Chiefs failed to gain over 100 yards throughout the game on offense, and Denver won the time of possession 42 minutes to 18. The play of the game was this touchdown to Devon Vele that was actually intended for Adam Trotman, but the ball got tipped a couple times and Vele ended up coming down with it in the back of the end zone. So congrats to Denver for beating the JV Chiefs, but they did clinch a playoff berth for the first time since 2015, so that is definitely worth celebrating if you are a Denver Broncos fan. A team that will also be in the playoffs is the LA Chargers. That's 3 teams from the AFC West. They already clinched a playoff spot heading into the week, but their 34-20 win over the Raiders on Sunday ensured that they would be the 5th seed. They're heading into the postseason on a high note, that's for sure. They've won 3 straight, with their offense averaging 36 points per game over that stretch. Herbert was yet again on fire in this one, throwing for nearly 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. Quentin Johnston had himself a massive day, catching 13 passes for 186 yards to lead the team in targets. That is very impressive. He also led in catches and yards. Their prize for winning the 5th seed, by the way, is that they get to play the Houston Texans, who are by far the weakest team of all the division winners. C.J. Stroud played the opening drive on Sunday and hit Nico Collins for a touchdown before his day was done, and Davis Longneck Mills came in to finish it out. Dameon Pierce broke off this 92-yard touchdown run in the second quarter, and he finished with 176 yards on the day. The Titans have to be stoked about the loss, though, as they secured the number 1 pick in the upcoming draft. New England was in line for it coming into the week, but they beat the Bills' backups and dropped all the way to the 4th pick. Let me deviate from this game for a second, because before we were going to export this video, the Titans made some more moves, and they're going to have a new GM in charge, sort of this number 1 overall pick. Adam Schefter, among everybody else, said Ran Carthon is out as the Titans general manager. He spent 2 years in Tennessee with 2 different head coaches and still has 4 years remaining on his contract. So again, a new Titans GM will make the number 1 overall pick. And some of you might be wondering, how on earth could he still have 4 years remaining on his contract? Well, he signed an extension with the team this past offseason, which is absolutely insane, because the wheel, the cog, the rotation of coaches and GMs just keep going. Terry McCormick, who is a beat writer for the Titans since 1997, said the instability around the Titans organization has reached a ridiculous level. Here's what is so crazy. 3rd straight year that a coach or GM has been fired. How are you supposed to build continuity when you keep lopping off heads? And in case you were wondering, the head coach, Brian Callahan, is going to remain the head coach. New GM is what they are looking for now. And Brett Coleman kind of summarizes what's going on here. Titans, aloof owner with 4th GM head coach combo in 4 years. I mean, this is absolutely insane. You cannot build a successful franchise when you keep lopping off the heads of those at the top or trying to make decisions. You bring in a new GM now, and it's like, okay, new roster decisions. You've got free agents that have been signed last offseason to the team that they may not even want anymore. They might not even like the draft picks that they have. Like, you have no stability in the Titans organization, and it is truly ground zero. That was a deviation from this game, but it was worth mentioning because this is huge news, and I am a bit concerned about the future of the Titans, who now hold the number 1 overall pick. But let's get back to this game. Drake May played the opening series, then it was the other rookie, Joe Milton's turn to shine. And I think New England was secretly planning, or at least hoping, for him to struggle a bit so they would lose. But instead, he went 22 of 29 for 241 yards and a touchdown, plus another on the ground to give the Patriots the win, 23-16. It was also reported after the game that they were cutting ties with head coach Jerod Mayo after just one season. Many are assuming that Mike Vrabel could be the next hire since he played for the Patriots for 8 seasons and has a lot of history there, but they will probably be interviewing several candidates for the head coaching spot before all is said and done, so we shall see. Mayo wasn't the only coach to be fired either. The Jags finally fired Doug Peterson after Sunday's loss to the Colts in overtime. This is maybe the least shocking firing of all time because I think most people expected this to happen a lot earlier on in the season. They finished the year 4-13, but it was long overdue when you combine the fact that the Jags lost 5 of their last 6 games at the tail end of the 2023 season as well. So Jacksonville, like New England, will be one of several teams looking for a new head coach this offseason, with the Chicago Bears being another notable team. They got to rain on the Packers' parade on Sunday, though, with Cairo Santos getting revenge for that blocked field goal against Green Bay earlier in the year and sinking this 51-yarder to give Chicago the win 24-22. The Packers secured the 7th seed and will now have to travel to Philly to take on the Eagles this week, which is obviously not ideal, especially when you consider the fact that Christian Watson, sadly, is feared to have torn his ACL in the game on Sunday. He came into the game with a bit of a knee issue, and it looks like things finally gave out. Not great, and he's obviously going to be out for the playoffs, with his 2025 season also being in question. To make matters worse, it was a bit scary for a moment when Jordan Love exited the game after losing feeling in his throwing hand after taking a shot to the elbow. Malik Willis came in and finished out the game, though Jordan Love said afterwards that he'll be good to go for next week. So that's some good news, but it's still definitely not how you want to head into the playoffs, especially against a team as good as the Philadelphia Eagles. Another team hoping to make some noise in the postseason is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They won the NFC South with their win over the Saints on Sunday. Things were looking a little bit sketchy, though, when the Saints were up 16-6 at halftime, but the Bucs outscored them 21-3 in the second half, and that was all she wrote. And I have to mention a player who hit a pretty big incentive in this game, and that is Mike Evans. He came into the game needing just 85 yards to not only extend his 1,000-yard streak to 11 consecutive seasons, which would tie Jerry Rice, but he would also earn $3 million. Well, Evans had 80 yards and needed just 5 more late in the game, but the Bucs had it won and could have just kneeled the clock out to end it. However, Todd Bowles sent the offense out there, and on the first play of the drive, Baker hit Evans on a quick out, and that resulted in 9 yards and had Mike Evans as well as his entire team all the way amped up. So that was a pretty cool moment for the future Hall of Famer, and it's even cooler after getting a big win to secure a home playoff game. For a moment there, I thought the Falcons were going to sneak in and the Bucs would be eliminated. Tampa was down by 10 at halftime, as I mentioned just a minute ago, and if they would have lost, then Atlanta would have just needed to beat the Panthers and they would have made it in. Well, no worries there, because not only did the Bucs beat the Saints, but the Falcons fell to the Panthers with Miles Sanders punching in this touchdown on the first drive of overtime to give Carolina the dub, 44-38. It's crazy to think that at one time the Falcons were 6-3. They had a multiple game lead on the Bucs in the NFC South. They closed out the season 2-6, thanks in part to Kirk Cousins struggling down the stretch. Well, he's going to be gone next year, with some speculating that the Browns could be a potential landing spot for him, and it appears that it's already Michael Penix Jr. time in Atlanta. It's kind of funny thinking back to draft night when everybody was completely shocked at them picking Penix, thinking he wouldn't play for at least a couple of years. Well, it didn't even take a full season, and we're already entering the Penix era, with the Falcons having to eat a piss ton of dead cap to move on from Cousins. Next up, the Commanders are going to be taking some momentum into the playoffs after downing the Cowboys on Sunday. Jaden Daniels played the first half and then rested for the remainder of the game as Marcus Mariota came in to finish it out. And props to Mariota because he actually balled out, completing 15 of 18 passes for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns, including this go-ahead TD late in the fourth to Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry made a hell of a grab to help secure the win, 23-19. They locked up the 6th seed as well and will travel to Tampa to take on the Bucs in the wild card round, and that should be a great game. For the Cowboys, they finished the year 7-10 and missed the playoffs for the first time since the 2020 season. And it's hard to feel bad for them. I mean, I feel bad for Dak Prescott. Hate injuries, don't get me wrong. That definitely played a factor in them not making the playoffs. But I do not feel bad for Jerry Jones and how he runs the show down there in Dallas. Get this, Cooper Rush was eligible for a $500,000 bonus if he played in over 55% of the team's snaps this season. Well, heading into the game on Sunday, he played 52.5% and likely would have hit the 55% mark had he played the entire game. Well, he didn't play any of the game as the team opted to start Trey Lance instead. They've been eliminated from the playoffs for a few weeks now, so if they really wanted to see what they had in Trey Lance, they could have started him sooner, and obviously Cooper Rush wouldn't even be close to that 55% mark. So of course, some did not like this, saying it was a really bad look for a team that's made a lot of really bad moves over the last few decades, attempting to save a little bit of money. So while Cooper Rush didn't hit that big incentive, Geno Smith definitely hit his. He needed 186 passing yards to earn a $2 million bonus and a win over the Rams to reach 10 wins on the year, which would net him another $2 million. Well, the Rams were resting a lot of key starters, but still made it a fight and actually almost won it at the end. But Jimmy Garoppolo, yeah, you heard that right, Jimmy Garoppolo's on the Rams. He couldn't connect with his receiver in Seattle, got the win 30-25. And yeah, Geno Smith hit his other bonus as well as he finished with 223 passing yards. The Rams had already wrapped up the NFC West last week, hence why they benched their starters. Some were surprised, though, because if they had won this game, they would have been the 3 seed. Instead, they elected to rest their starters and wound up losing and dropped to the 4 seed. Well, had they had the 3 seed, they would have hosted the Commanders, but instead, they're going to be playing the Vikings at home. But as we've seen with some other teams and injuries that have happened, sometimes it's better to play it safe and give your players a little bit of rest before the playoffs, especially if you're not going to have that first round bye. And before I get into the final game of the week, while Geno Smith and Mike Evans, as I just mentioned, got the biggest bonuses of the lot in these Week 18 games, there were several other players that you're going to see here on screen that made over $1 million or close to it in bonuses alone. So wanted to give them a quick nod and shout out to say good on them and their teams for being able to help make that happen, even if the Cowboys didn't want to do that with Cooper Rush. And that brings us to Sunday Night Football, Lions and Vikings, what was supposedly the most significant regular season game of all time. 2 14-win teams duking it out for the NFC North and the number 1 seed in the NFC. Well, many people, including myself, expected this to be a high-scoring affair based on how banged up the Lions' defense has been, and then obviously how many points they can score on the other side of the ball. Well, it could have been a shootout if the Vikings knew how to score in the red zone. They had the ball inside the Lions' 10-yard line 4 times and only came away with 6 points, 2 field goals out of those 4 trips. Check this out. The Vikings became the first team in the last 30 years to go 0 for 4 in the red zone, fail to score a touchdown on 3 separate goal-to-go opportunities, have 2 failed 4th and goal plays, and a missed field goal all in one game. Sam Darnold was clearly rattled by either the moment, the atmosphere, or the constant pressure Detroit was sending. I mean, it was probably all of the above. He was a yikes machine all game long, missing wide open guys and finishing with only 166 yards while completing just 18 of 41 passes. The Vikings defense forced 2 interceptions, so good on them, but it really didn't matter because the offense didn't do much with those 2 takeaways. And aside from those 2 interceptions, Jared Goff picked apart the defense for 231 yards and a touchdown while throwing for just 6 incompletions. But the story of this game was Jahmyr Gibbs. This man had 23 carries for 139 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground, while also catching 5 passes for 31 more yards and another touchdown. So he finished the game with 4 touchdowns, absolutely insane, and then he had 20 combined touchdowns on the season, which was the most of any skill player, and honestly, he might already be a top 3 back in the league. He'll have an extra week to rest up before their first playoff game because with that win, the Lions secured their division, the NFC North, and also the 1 seed in the NFC and a first-round bye. And now that Week 18 is officially in the books, let's take a look at the matchups and schedule for the wild card round this weekend. Starting in the AFC, the Chiefs have the first-round bye, the 2-seed Bills will host the 7-seed Broncos, the 3-seed Ravens will host the 6-seed Steelers, and the 4-seed Texans will host the 5-seed Chargers. As for the NFC, the Lions secured the first-round bye, the 2-seed Eagles will be hosting the 7-seed Packers, the Bucs are the 3-seed, and they'll host the 6-seed Commanders, and finally the 4-seed Rams will host the 5-seed Vikings. So those are the matchups, but let's now take a quick look at the schedule for this weekend and who plays when. We've got 2 Saturday games, 3 Sunday games, and 1 Monday night game. The Texans and Chargers will kick off the weekend on Saturday afternoon on CBS. Then the Ravens and Steelers will square off on Amazon Prime that evening. The noon games on Sunday will be between the Bills and Broncos on CBS. The Eagles and Packers play after that on Fox, and the Bucs and Commanders will close out the day on NBC. Well, that means the Rams and Vikings will play Monday night on ABC/ESPN. And there you have it, the conclusion of Week 18, which is also the conclusion of the 2024 regular season. I can't wait to see how these playoffs unfold, but you guys got to let me know down in the comments your takeaways from these Week 18 games, as well as how you think the playoff bracket is going to play out at least for a wild card weekend. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.